Finally managed to get my hands on the Oppo Find X Pro. So you might have heard about this phone. It's been out for a little while now. I'm a bit late, but better late than never, right, as they say. So I did get this model here from the Oppo Ambassadors program, right? So I wanted to make that really clear that I'm part of the Oppo Ambassador program straight away here. Does that mean that this is a paid video that's going to be biased? Well, no. First off, I'm not paid, and it's going to be my standard review here. I'll let you know all the pros and the cons that I encounter in this. And Oppo, no, they don't have to approve of this video before I publish it. All the opinions expressed are my own. So with that out of the way, you probably know a bit about this phone, right? It's an Android flagship with a Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, but it has a custom chip in this, an MPU, that handles low light photography and video. It's the Murray Silicon. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of difference it's going to make versus the typical standard Qualcomm ISP there. So my model here has got 12 gigabytes of RAM, 256 gigabytes of UFS 3.1 storage. The screen, this one, has an in-screen fingerprint reader, 6.7 inches, a Quad HD resolution, 120 Hz refresh rate, 5,000 mAh hour battery, 80 watt wire charging, and 50 watt wireless charging. So enough of the specs. Let's jump in and take a look at this phone in detail. So this is what we get in the box. We have a case, TPU one, that fits it perfectly, of course, a premium services card, which is basically like a VIP card, SIM tray tool, safety information, and then our charger. Now, this one is 80 watts, and I'll give you the exact charge time later on in this review, and our cable, which is Type-C to Type-A. Now, this is one very slick looking phone. It's basically like a mirror surface here. This is the ceramic black. And I think the camera module here from Oppo is one of the best looking ones that I've seen on a recent flagship. Now, this phone is almost 120 grams, so I would not call it a light phone. Now, you can see we've got some branding here. They've got powered by the Murray Silicon. So that is their MPU in there that's handling the processing of the photos, the night shots, HDR video, and they're not using that Qualcomm ISP, not this time around. So 50 megapixel main camera, 50 megapixel macro, and a 2x optical 13 megapixel sensor, which I find a little unusual. They should have gone for at least 3x optical, because 2x digital from a 50 megapixel camera actually looks pretty good. Now, the SIM tray in this one is 2 nano SIMs, no micro SD card support. Type-C does support video out, one of 2 loudspeakers, secondary mic here for voice calls, and 2 antenna lines. So the frame around the outside is metal. So the screen here with this one, it's Gorilla Glass Victus curved. It's a LTPO2 display, AMOLED, and it's very bright, about 1300 nits maximum brightness. I can make it out in direct sunlight. And the screen has a Quad HD Plus resolution, which by default is actually set to full HD Plus. So if you go in here, I'll just swipe up to my apps drawer there. You can see the camera, which is in the cutout there. Now, this one's a selfie cam that is 32 megapixels. It doesn't sadly have 4K video recording, which is really odd considering how much that Oppo's pushing the cameras on these, and they just lack 4K with a front-facing camera, 1080p only with video, and I'll give you samples of it later on. Now, other options you get here with this display, you do have their image sharpener and video color enhancement. Now, these I do find tend to make some of the images look a little bit too artificial to my eyes at least, so I don't actually use them at all. Now, I do like the fact that under the screen color mode, we've got some options in here. So by default, it's vivid, you've got natural, and then pro mode, so cinematic, brilliant, and that's great. You can also adjust the color temperature. Now, just going into some real world images very quickly here, some photos that I have taken. I think it's a good display. It's very good. It's definitely flagship level. I just wish that it didn't have the curvature to it. I actually do prefer flat screens, and I'm sure a lot of people would probably agree with me. And when you look at the screen at certain angles, you can see right on the edges that it does shift out a little bit, but it's not really too bad. Now, touch response, gestures are all working really well with this screen. The Oppo Find X5 Pro is running Android 12, and I do have the latest patch from them that has come out recently, had that update, and we do have 12 gigabytes of RAM. So it's Android 12 running their Color OS 12.1, and you can even allocate a little bit more RAM, but it's not actually RAM, of course. This is virtual RAM, so it's a caching system here, file caching that is supposed to help improve the fluidity of the ROM. And I have found it to be really good, the performance here. Now, I have 256 gigabytes of UFS 3.1 storage. I'll get onto the speeds of that very soon, but I found that this is definitely one of the better Android 12 ROMs. I found the same with the Realme, for example, their GT2 and the GT2 Pro, that Color OS, and that's Realme UI with them, but it's basically the same, is very quick, very fluid. Animations look great. Animations, for me, are much better than, say, MIUI. And even, I have to say, sometimes better than One UI 4.1 that I've tested out with my Samsung. So I'll quickly go here into Twitter. And the scrolling performance here, that's better than my Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra. It is very smooth and fluid. Now, normally Twitter, the app for Android, is not really that great, but it seems to run well. So optimization definitely gets a big thumbs up from me, what they've done here, Oppo, with this, because the performance is great. Now, multitasking works really well, swapping over between your different apps. I really have not seen any issues, lag with that. And you can see the available RAM, that it does actually use quite a bit, that I've only got 4 gigabytes available out of the 12. So how is Oppo when it comes to bloatware? A lot of brands, they do cram a lot bit of bloatware. And there is quite a bit on here, so I don't like this. We've got featured apps, TikTok, all sorts of things, hot apps, hot games that you need to go through the settings of the launcher to actually disable that, to stop it from showing up. They're recommended apps. They're not actually installed. It's a bit of a pain. And you can see these other things in here that I had to go through and remove. I don't think that this should be on here for such an expensive phone, so that's not great to see. Now, the battery capacity, 5,000 milliamp hours. The charge time with the 80-watt charging is just 37 minutes. That's very good. Now, that's from 7% to 100. I don't think that's bad at all. Like, anything that's under 1 hour for me is good. And I know, yes, there are phones out there now that charge in around about 20 minutes. So you could say it's falling behind a little bit there, but it's still way faster than an iPhone. So the internal storage here, 256 gigabytes is my version here, UFS 3.1. And you can see from these speeds, certainly not bad at all. Now, they're not the fastest random reads or writes that I've seen, but they're still quick. The sequential is also very good there for reads especially, and you'll see too that it can produce a very high score with Antutu, nearing up towards 900,000. That's not actually, though, the fastest I have seen out of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, which can normally get about 100,000 points more than this. So why is it a little bit lower? Well, that's because I ran it on balanced mode. If you then put it into turbo, well, the more high performance mode, I should say, that's when it performs to the maximum, but it generates a little bit more heat. You can see it went up 10 degrees there compared to, well, 9.8, not much of a difference there, and you lose about 5% battery from just one benchmark run. So it does throttle quite a bit. Now, I'm seeing this with a lot of Snapdragon 8 Gen 1s. This is nothing new, so it gets a really good best score of almost 2,600. But then the lowest score there is quite low. So look at that. It throttles down stability to 62%. And it does get quite hot in the process. It's a hot running chip, that Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. So it passes the safety net test there, and it does have NFC on board. We've also got wireless charging too, and inverted wireless charging. And we've got a DRM here of level 1 for it, although it doesn't, I took the screenshot bad. It's actually a level 1 that it does have with DRM, which is good. Camera 2 API, full support here, level 3, another great thing. GPS also works very well with a good average signal strength. Then our battery life. So this really surprised me. I set it to Quad HD, 120 Hertz. I did not expect to get this score here. So this is a fixed benchmark. So 200 nits is what I calibrate the brightnesses of the displays to on all the phones, and it runs it. So you can compare it to my other reviews. It's not a bad score for the high resolution and the refresh rate. Now, real world use, you are looking around 8 hours of on-screen time, which is better than some other phones, better than my Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra, for example, which I get only around 6 to 7 hours out of. So not bad at all when it comes to battery performance from that 5,000 milliamp hour battery. Loudspeaker performance now. So we do have the earpiece that also acts as a loudspeaker. Now, voice call quality, it's a phone after all. Does sound good. I've got no problems with it, no issues with it. It does have noise cancellation on the other side. I ended up just doing a test call to myself, and it sounds like any other flagship basically there. So no 3.5mm headphone jack. You need to use a Type-C adapter. And when you do, the quality is fine. I've got no issues with it. It's loud, it's clear, and no complaints really at all. The loudspeakers, they do sound pretty good. The volume's not bad, and there's a little bit of bass to them. Here's a sample now of one of my tracks at 100% volume. because it's that demanding, it just cannot maintain 60 frames per second. The only phones that I've seen that are able to do that are actively cooled phones with little fans inside them with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. It's quite a hot flagship chipset from all the phones I've been testing out with this chip. So performance dipping down at times, but normally when there's not too many enemies on screen, you'll have mid-40s as the frame rate. So right now it's 37 frames per second, but it should go up now to around the mid-40s. It seems to be struggling a little bit. Clearly some throttling is happening. So what I'm going to do now is play for about 1 hour and then report back on the thermals with my thermal imaging camera. Okay, so it's definitely warm to the touch and it's around about 42 degrees Celsius. That is the front of the Find X5 Pro, and the rear of it a little warmer. Actually, no, about the same, around 41 degrees Celsius there. Ambient temperatures are about 25. So it is clearly throttling to me because I'm seeing the frame rate go from 40s, mid-40s down to now mid and lower 30s. So they control the heat, Oppo, but the performance does drop off once it starts to heat up. Now with the X5 Pro cameras, moving over to the X5 Pro camera, so I find that the front camera is the letdown of the cameras with this phone. So with video performance, it's only 1080p maximum, no 4K option. And it does have electronic image stabilization. You need to enable it all the time because it's normally off by default. Now you've got a closer crop and you can pull out a little bit right here. The stabilization is good. Now I do find with the front facing camera here, which is 32 megapixels, that it sometimes does overexpose, especially with the photos. Let's have a look at the rear camera now with video. Rear camera is now 4K. This is the ultra wide, so 50 megapixels, electronic image stabilization. It is very steady as I walk along here, as you can see. Now I can swap over to the main camera, which is 1x. Now this has 5-axis optical image stabilization. So 3 are the sensor and then 2-axis for the lens. So this looks very steady and the quality is very good. Now it does have quite a crop to it and it is applying that electronic image stabilization. And now very quickly, low light video, which is looking very promising here on the Oppo Find X5 Pro. Really good stabilization. This is me just walking ahead. I'm not using a gimbal. And that's coming out great. So that sign should look blue. It's actually looking a little lighter than what it really is. Now, what did you think of those photo samples that I just showed you? I think the low light is looking really good. Like, look at the details captured. And then the amount of noise, or should I say the lack of noise in blacks is impressive, very good. It's probably got one of the best ultra-wide cameras that I've seen in daylight and low light. really good there. But there are some areas of weakness. I have noticed with the main camera that if you take photos with any moving subjects, even not moving that quickly, like just animals, people and stuff, it can blur that photo. So there's a bit of shutter lag happening that I hope that Oppo can improve upon, just speed things up a little bit. I guess because all the processing that's going on, it could be slowing things down. That's why it tends to blur any photo with the slightest bit of movement with it. The other is that the selfie shots on this I don't really like. I think the HDR is a bit over the top. It sometimes gets it wrong, it overexposes, and they just seem to be a little bit too bright at times, I've noticed, with the selfies. And of course the video performance, it's only 1080p maximum with the front-facing camera, which is really behind other flagship phones. Excellent build quality. I like the camera module. I think it looks great. Really good battery life. I'm able to get about 9 hours of on-screen time out of this, which is really good. That's not gaming, however. And then the ROM, the UI, it's very quick, it's very fast, animations look great, and it's been very stable for me. I've had no issues at all with the stability. Fingerprint unlocking, great. Wireless charging is there, 50 watts. We also have 80 watt wired charging, 37 minutes, fully charges. There's a lot of really good things about this phone, but there's just two other little things I wanted to mention, that when you game a lot, it doesn't get hot because it throttles. It throttles that Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 right down in the performance. So Genshin Impact on high settings, the highest possible settings, can go from 50 frames per second when it's cold, when it's cool, when you start out gaming. An hour later, I only was getting about 35 frames per second. It's a big dip, and you also see that in 3D Mark, their Wildlife Extreme test. It really throttles down almost up to 40% performance. It will drop to keep the thermals in check. Now thermals, as I showed you, are actually really good. Doesn't go over 40 degrees Celsius to the touch, but we lose that performance. The other for me is the pricing of this. Now it's a great phone from Oppo. It offers a lot and it's got a lot going for it, but still 1,300 euros or just under now at the time of me posting this video. I think it's a little too expensive for what it is. But other than that, it is a very good phone here. And I'm not just saying that because I am an Oppo ambassador, no. It's just what it is. It's got a lot going for it, but as I mentioned, there's still a few areas that Oppo can improve, and it's mostly just all software tweaks to really get the best out of the Find X5 Pro. So thanks a lot for watching my review. Hope to see you in the next one. Do subscribe for more. Bye for now.